There we go.
All right, there's one problem down. Yeah, give it a moment.
Oh, no, it seems promising.
Yeah, but now you're just gonna see me, so now I gotta get that connected.
We're in a practice session.
Nope,
Yeah.
Yeah, we haven't gone live yet.
so we should, it's 6:30, so let me go live, at least people could watch it.
Yeah, at the bottom. Look, next to the top thing.
Stop video on the bottom.
There's a little arrow.
A little arrow. It should be.
Video settings? No, wait, I'm ready to go. So, last problem, and that's not gonna be corrected today, the wireless mics are just static, right?
Okay, is that working at home?
Yes.
You want me to look up?
You should be able to.
Well, we'll see if they do some, you might have to select for the microphones. Right. Okay. So.
What happened now? 1, 2, 3, 4. So whenever I try to use the camera controls, it turns off my video.
I can hear you. Is that too?
Oh, maybe not. So it turns it off whenever I try to zoom in. So don't zoom in, and it zoomed in.
Oh, yeah. Maybe we can.
And when I zoom out, it turns it
All right.
off. Why don't we leave it like that?
As long as it records a full possibility.
Should we just out so we can see the whole room? I think we can do that. Like this. It's like- That's
There
there.
we go. But whoever speaks does have to speak. into the mic.
Yeah. Or shall.
I mean, if it's being
better to-
recorded now, I think
No.
we have to-
And the mic is listening to this? Right.
Yes. So I just want to make sure everybody signed in.
Jeremy, are you able to tell if there are people joining us at home?
Plenty of people joining us from home. 12 people.
If it was curious, maybe it was there.
I'm not sure if it's. So maybe, do you want to try speaking into?
Make sure.
Seems like it must be the computer one, so, you know. You could either stand by the computer or, yeah, and, but you can change the audio, you can change the audio under the video here. You should be able to tell.
Julio, I can't answer this question. Are CB7 members online have attendance knowledge acknowledged?
Take the participant, no.
Let's give it a try. There we go, audio settings. Oh, wait.
Different microphone.
Yeah, go back to the menu.
The parent,
Is the microphone right? Or sound technology, is the microphone?
I'm sorry, which one?
It's not coming up on the sound button.
1, 2, 3, 4. No.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go back to the regular audio. Well, it's the microphones that we're trying to get connected. So it's looking like that's not.
here, it might, I just don't know whether.
Yeah.
But maybe we just, whoever speaks needs to stand at a computer.
Okay. Let's, just go ahead and get started. And I'm trying to go my agenda, but of course, this is not connected to the microphone.
So we just need to project.
It's that microphone loop that is installed.
No.
It's not like phone. That's not. Yeah, I think.
Oh, wow. Yeah. That's audio.
What is it?
That's a bad audio. Oh, we're not talking at that. Okay. I'm gonna go. Okay. I don't want to go.
I know you, yeah.
The chair can't be shy.
I just prefer in committees more personal discussion. Welcome everyone. Thank you for coming, and I very much appreciate the accommodation for first in-person committee meeting. I know that there have been some other committees that have been in person, but this is I guess our first since February of 2020. So I appreciate folks being able to make it. I know some board members weren't able to and are joining virtually. Although we fix or get improved upon our hybrid technology, that'll get better. I wanted to start off the board year with an executive committee meeting to just talk about some of the priorities that we've been thinking about, and some of the things that I would like to do, and work in collaboration with some folks. Um, so, uh, the first thing, well, before I start, because there's some new faces here, and this is probably one of the rare opportunities we get an opportunity to meet new folks. If you were recently appointed to the board, can you just raise your hand? Thank you so much for coming. I believe we have Diana, Amal, Amel, um, Ira, um, and Hannah. Welcome everyone. Um, and just to start off, I guess formally, my name is Julio Peña. I'm the new chair of the board. Very excited for the year and to with everyone. So one of the first things I wanted to talk about for this year is the committee meetings. I know and this is something that I've been talking with some of the newer chairs, folks returning. Um, Committee meetings is really where the hard work of the board gets done, right? That's where we are debating on issues, talking about things, and really addressing the things for our neighbors. Um, and I want to make sure that we are working in a way that is uh, bringing people in and ensuring that we're hearing folks and being communicative, but we're also like doing the actual work. One thing that I've noticed in the past couple of years, and I think this is also hard in kind of like a new environment, is that a lot of discussion that is really fruitful and worthwhile, but it it tends to a lot of the discussion that folks are having at the larger board meetings are kind of discussions that should have or could have happened. Obviously, we are a group of 50 volunteers, and not everyone can go to every committee meeting. It's almost gonna be difficult. But I just encourage folks if there's specific issues or topics that are coming up before committee to really try to participate. For myself, when I can't attend, I do my best to watch the recording so I can get a good grasp of the topic. Um, but it's really just I want to make sure that the monthly board meetings that we have are really about summarizing the discussions and also making sure that people have the information that they need, whether that's the board members or the community, and to really uh, get the work of the board done in terms whether that is resolution, whether that is voting on important issues, whether that is hearing points and vacancies, whatever, what have you, but really making sure that the monthly board meeting is an opportunity that we can share the information and really come to decisions if it needs to be. Um, and then just uh, keeping in with committees, um, one thing that I would like to see and encourage folks, you notice a lot of things over the past couple of years have started at 6 o'clock when we're kind of in a hybrid setting, or virtual setting, I should say. And I can only speak for myself, but um, many people have been working in person or have been working some kind of um, hybrid work from home or telecommuting model. But I also just wanted to make sure that we're being sensitive to folks' personal lives and having meetings start at 6 o'clock can be pretty challenging. For myself included, I don't believe work until 5, and luckily I have a very short commute. Not everyone does.
Well, we need to see you closer.
That's good. And I really want to make sure that folks are have an opportunity to participate and come to meetings and really whether that is get a bite to eat before, take care of family, but really making sure that being mindful of the needs of our board members. So I'm just encouraging folks for committees for them to start at 6:30 instead of 6 o'clock. Um, I don't know if folks have any comments about committees or things in general before we kind of move on.
I just have a question. Do we have any guidance from the state on mandatory place meetings, if they have any guidelines for how we should be preparing for this year's committee board meeting?
So just to repeat the question, you read my mind, Cindy. Dan's question was, have we gotten any guidance from the city in terms of in-person meetings and or if there's any kind of mandatory requirement? Correct me if I'm wrong, right now we are still in the executive order that allows us to have virtual meetings. I don't know if it will be extended much
So I'm confused
longer.
by that. Is the executive order for COVID was moved as of yesterday? Right, okay. We are governed by the state's open meetings law. But we still are in the monkeypox one. So that's until the 26th. I don't know. They've never explained that.
Yeah, so we need to get a little clarity from the way that the state law was updated a couple of months ago in the last legislative session. There is leeway for community boards and city agencies, but it's kind of a little bit of gray area on how much leeway and where and like how we can do that. So as of right now, we're still operating. If folks choose to have an in-person meeting, they can. But for the September meeting, it'll likely be virtual. It will be virtual. Cindy.
I know that there are some board members that are signed in via the webinar, and there are some questions about whether they can participate in this meeting today.
Mhm.
And so it might be helpful to highlight for folks that are watching from home or executive members and board members, whether or not they're able to participate, and if so, how.
So that is a goal that we are working on to make sure that so we can hold a hybrid meeting so that people in person and people both virtually can participate in meetings. I don't, we're not quite there yet with the technology. So for example, it's ensuring that people on the Zoom can both hear us and speak. And when they speak, it's heard in this room. But when we speak and it's heard in this room, there's not an echo being bounced back into the Zoom. Like you can do that in a very rudimentary way, but we're as part of government, we want to make sure that that is done in a really in a way that doesn't allow or that doesn't hinder participation. So in terms of a hybrid meeting where people joining virtually can participate, we're not there yet. Yeah, Cindy.
Is there a way to use like the chat for people if they're from home to type in their questions? I know it's not ideal.
So there's the Q&A that's available now.
Okay.
So people can type in their questions there. Do you want to see if we could open up somebody's microphone, see if somebody could speak?
You can give that a try. I'm a little scared of what may happen, but
I would suggest everybody holds their
So, two things. One, we should check what's in the Q&A now, but we could also mute that before something happens.
yes. So yeah, Jeremy, would you mind checking the Q&A, see if there are any?
You got it. Want me to read it?
Sure.
Sure. So Pat started with very muffled, hard to hear and understand. Cynthia Gonzalez, chat is disabled and audio is terrible, hard to understand what is being said. Chat's disabled because people have order. So if you order to open chat, we can do that. Thanks for cleaning the screen, better visual, bad audio. Would it be possible for Julio to speak directly into the mic? Sound is coming through as muffled a bit. By the way, the room looks good, just noticed more space. Poor audio does not allow hearing impaired persons. Need to enable the chat.
So folks, and thank you for the comments about the room. I didn't do anything.
I don't think anybody did. We just moved the chairs.
They can't make more room. Right on the wall.
Oh, thank you, Katie. Katie brought some snacks, so please help yourselves. You can just sign in for me. Thank you. All right.
Don't be shy.
So keeping in line with the last topic for committees, and actually let me talk about the next agenda item first before I talk about the other one. So and I didn't print any copies up because my printer at work decided to go to cray. But so one thing that we've been working on the past couple of months is a board member handbook for new board members. We just started or just have an amazing draft. Thank you so much, Karen. It is like a dream come true. Yeah, so let's give Karen a round of applause. And essentially, and this is something that we've talked about for a while, but really haven't implemented. And as we're creating it now, it's really going to be a guidebook for new board members, for veteran board members, and really highlight the things like what does it mean to be a CB7 board member? What are some things to should know how you can facilitate a meeting, and really just a one-stop shop on CB7 on being able to support this our board. It is still very much a draft. We can we're still working on it. I believe executive team members may have seen the draft via email today. Phenomenal, and it's only going to get better. And one of the things I really wanted to highlight, which will also be in the handbook, is really supporting folks in when we're writing committee meeting minutes. I for myself really struggled when I first joined the board on like what goes in minutes. This was before I learned Robert's Rules of Order. Like what goes in meeting minutes, how do you document certain things, what goes in, what doesn't go in it, and I'll be sharing this out via email to all of the chairs, but I really wanted to have a template here which I can share. To really ensure that folks know what or just like how they can minutes are only by 6 copies. But it's essentially information on the meeting, but also like who's in attendance, what were the agenda items, what were there were any votes in the meeting, how do you write those down or any motions, and of course I can send this out for folks, but it's really just an opportunity or just a kind of template to make sure that one, people aren't burdening themselves when they're drafting minutes, but also capturing the work that we're doing in committee meetings so that if people want to take a look, people can take a look at a glance and just see what happened in a committee. And again, it's just really a template. It's not obviously it's not a perfect template, but it just summarizes very specifically some of the things that should be in minutes and things that shouldn't. So one of the things that we usually always say when you're documenting minutes, minutes are supposed to be a record of what happened, not of what someone said. So if there's a discussion on, I'm just use everyone's favorite topic. If there's a discussion on Third Avenue, for example, and you're documenting minutes, you're not putting that Julio said this and Katie said that. You're documenting if there was a discussion on safety issues along Third Avenue and 60th Street. I'm just using that. That's just one that we talked about. And if there is a vote or some kind of resolution that comes out of that discussion, that gets documented. There was a motion made to support increasing small, crossing guards on Third Avenue and 60th Street. Uh, and the motion passed unanimously. The motion passed by 6 votes, or the motion failed by like it's really documenting actions of the committee and not necessarily this person said that and this person said this. Go ahead.
So this is very like granular, but I think it's an important distinction, and I appreciate your guidance. I don't know if people can hear me. I'm home, so I'm going to come up here.
It's coming up on the first caption.
Okay. Right. So the question I have, so on one hand, there's discussion that happens just in general, and there's not a motion on the floor. But then there are situations where there's a motion on the floor, discussion takes place, and then there's vote. It's within the context of the motion.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense what I'm asking?
Yes.
So when it's a motion, we have a motion on the floor for vote. Maybe someone proposes a friendly amendment, that definitely goes in there, right?
Correct.
And then let's say there's discussion. What extent is that documented because it's within the context of the motion?
It's the same thing as before. You're documenting what happened and not what was said by specific people. So if there's a discussion, you can summarize the discussion, but it's not detailing everything that someone said. So, for example, you said there's a friendly amendment to include 59th Street and Third Avenue because of the extra school, and we have the on the other side. That would be included in there, and that you say Cindy introduced a friendly amendment to increase the range to 59th Street and Third Avenue. Because that's an action that was taken by the committee and then gets voted on. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I appreciate, what you said. It is very granular and it's very specific, but it's also, I think, helpful because it really, my hope is that it streamlines the process for folks and also makes the work less daunting, because I think sometimes when I myself are writing minutes about certain things, I often feel like what needs to go in and what doesn't, but it's really just a very summary of the meeting. And I think, now we're also very fortunate that we get to live stream our meetings. So we have a record to go back to. So folks want specific details, they view the recording to get like specific items. So it's really just a way to support folks in that process.
One follow-up. Are they because that's people comment to get on the record about something, and I see there's a separate heading for that.
Yes. So public comment, it follows the same principle of what happened and not what was said. So if there are 3 members at a education youth committee meeting, and during the comment portion, speak on the new school on 36th Street and 5th Avenue, for example, that would get summarized in public comment and not specifically who said what or where. I will say the caveat to that is if after public comment there's action by the committee, that would get documented. So if all 5 public commenters said that they want support for crossing guards on 36th Street and 5th Avenue, and then the committee decided to act on that afterwards, that would get documented in the
But would you put in that the 5 people got up and spoke that they were crossing, that they
You would summarize, yes,
summarize that,
yes.
right?
But if it's each public comment is very different, then you just, there was a public comment portion varying from X, Y, and Z.
Let me, just so I don't make sure I understand what we talk about the meetings. The general meetings, we're still gonna have them.
Correct.
Right? The committee meetings, that's also gonna be handled through Zoom?
Yes, unless we get different guidance from anywhere, I'm working on the assumption that we're having our meetings virtual. With the exception of this in-person meeting.
Getting back to the committee minutes, the committee meetings, uh, those minutes have to be submitted in time for the members of the board to read them before the board meeting. So Jeremy, I might need your guidance here as to what specifically is required to get those, like what's the deadline, I guess, for getting those minutes into.
So staff does not have a deadline. We don't have the ability to give our board members deadlines. We send helpful reminders to send it to us, but we don't give you, well, we say we need to get it by noon so we could actually send it out. But we'd love to get it earlier than that. I just don't have the ability to hold your feet to the fire.
So what I will say, when we revise the bylaws, the requirement is that minutes are submitted 7 days after a committee meeting. So for example, this meeting is being held on the 13th. Sorry, I forgot the date. So I would have till Wednesday, the 21st to submit. Obviously, I'll submit it before because I want to make sure that folks at the board meeting have a summary of what happened. But it's supposed to be within 7 days of the committee meeting. And I agree, it's not, productive that, one, we're kind of hounding folks to get minutes. If they need support, they can definitely reach out to other members of the committee. But also, it hurts kind of the entire board because if minutes aren't included, then folks can't necessarily get the summary of what happened. So it's really just encouraging finding chairs and vice chairs, but also making sure that we're submitting in a timely fashion so that we have a comprehensive board packet that not just share with the board, but with the public who wants to read what we're doing. Yeah. So the other items that I just wanted to touch upon in terms of some of the goals we have for this coming year. I expect transportation to really be at the very top. Really having large discussions about what we see and our vision for not just the Fifth Avenue corridor, but surrounding. We're going to be having some coming meetings in the next couple of weeks and months, really digging in. And I think, given this community's relationship to the Department of Transportation in the past, it's really important that we outline what it is that we want in along that corridor, but also ensuring that we can hold city agencies accountable to make sure that they're really committing to what they say they do, and then when they're not utilizing our resources to get the things that we're looking for. So I really expect transportation to be at the very top. One of the things that we're really I've talked about with some other board members is really like stepping up and enhancing our kind of like digital presence. A lot of the things that we have done in the last 2 years have been virtual. Hybrid meetings and virtual meetings have really engaged participation with our community, but it's also really needs to be in tandem with what kind of outreach are we doing. We have a Facebook page, we have Twitter, our new website is coming online very soon. Like what are some ways that we can kind of enhance that work so that we're engaging members and people have the resources to fully participate with us as a community board. So it's really ensuring that kind of goes hand in hand. Like we're at the virtual and like this is the world, but it's also like we're really tapping into all of the ways that we can tap into the neighborhood and the community and our residents. And then because my iPad is not working, we had 3 other agenda items or 3 other topics that I wanted to bring up. I wrote them down and it's not looking. I think I'll pause here to see if there are any questions or comments, and then take a look at the Zoom Q&A.
The chat is, it's not working.
So it says it's enabled.
Sorry, I just want to make sure people. This box. Everyone. Or hosting panels.
I got it.
Okay. Thank you, Cindy.
I was just gonna ask, so when we talk with the you guys for presence, do you have any guidance or recommendations if you want to help or, you know, get on that next experience?
So just to repeat the question, if we're talking about digital presence, what kind of guidance or help is there? We're gonna be asking for a bunch of volunteers. You know, I was a couple of years ago, was like really that was something I was really passionate about and like supporting the board and engaging. But definitely be looking to board members to really support that work, whether that is through our official CB7 pages and sites, but also like how are we as board members elevating that work ourselves, right? That's really tough, an untapped resource for some of us. Katie?
I have a question around fundraising. So you people can't raise, but I know that we have some sort of I wanted to understand your perspective. How do you see that as a priority? And if you could just let people know what that entity is and how it's fundraising.
Thank you. So Katie asked in terms of fundraising, recognizing that the board cannot fundraise, but there is a separate entity. What is it? And talking about that. Absolutely, and thank you for pointing that out. So there is a nonprofit organization called Friends of CB7, which was started several years ago. And one, it does have an opportunity and a way to raise funds and the work of the board. And it's stuff that we did in the past. So, for example, a lot of the work we did around the industry city rezoning was supported by CB7. And I have been trying to grapple my head around like how can we pull in some newer folks to kind of support that work because it has been a little dormant. And my worry is that it'll kind of fall to the wayside as it did in years past. But I think that there is energy around supporting that work because not everything can be supported by CB7. And I think there's an opportunity for the Friends of CB7 to kind of enhance that work in a way that that continues to support. But I just also want to recognize it is a separate entity. It is a 501c3 organization, not affiliated with the city, but it is a separate organization which was created to support the work of the
I was just gonna say, we did talk to some of the community boards, like a couple of years ago, about how they sort of manage this type of relationship, and really the idea really is that like the financial needs that we might have, like interpretation services that's provided in the way that it needs to be for the community. You know, so that, I think it is something that's like the structure of it. needs to directly support or the needs aren't being fulfilled, but I would hope that we can get them fulfilled as much as
I agree.
from whether it's the borough president's office or different agencies, like making meetings accessible to speak different languages or meeting, ASL things like a
Yeah, I think a leading question, is I've run into this in legal, like legal advice, legal counsel, that's not affiliated with the if there isn't funding from the community directly, we're going to get that support. So, of course, it's a leading question because I think we need independent legal pro bono or
This isn't being picked up by the microphone.
So, excuse me, Katie's follow-up was that it was kind of a leading question because one of the things that it's using the Friends of CB7 to support the work of the board that may not necessarily be always can be funded by the board. And one of the things she was referring to was legal counsel or legal work to last mile committee and finding independent legal counsel to review the work so that it gets done in a way that's supportive of the board. I agree. I think that was essentially why the 501c3 was created to kind of like in those situations and others that we've come across. But again, it being a 501c3, there are like other things that we need to make sure that we're doing to support the Friends of. And I'm happy, like if folks are interested in supporting that, hit me up or I will hit you up. Go ahead, Cindy.
when the new website launches, will we be able to post all minutes, committee minutes and monthly meeting minutes so that community members and group members have access to those?
I'm going to pass that to Jeremy to answer.
So if you mean we, you mean the community board, the answer is yes.
Thank you.
Are there any questions in the Q&A?
So the number, or most of them are statements, but let me go back to where we were. Why was this document shared with committee chairs? That was Cynthia Gonzalez.
The handbook?
I can only say that I finished it this afternoon and just sent it as a courtesy to the executive committee that was meeting today. Everyone will get a copy shortly.
Yeah, so it is a draft. And to answer your question, Cynthia, it is still very much a draft. So we also don't want it shared publicly because it's still very much a draft.
I mean, there are sections saying with question marks and asking people to submit. It's not ready at any point.
Correct.
It's just basically a sketch at this point.
And if anybody loves to write and they love procedure,
Give me a call.
so that's the other thing Carrie and I have been writing, but we, welcome your support in this effort. Okay.
Christina Lem said it's not a transcript, it's a record of key things that happen. Discussions like that can be put into an appendix.
Very well said.
Jerry Chan said chat is still disabled. That was 15 minutes ago. Christina Lem, deeper discussions can be appendix. Cynthia Gonzalez, chat is disabled. Committee chairs often host guests who are giving information to the community. As a result, most of what we report is what was said. Only discussions made by the committee is discussed in the board meeting. So how do we report what we did if no one knows what was reported?
To answer your question, Cynthia, and I'll share this via email with the full executive committee and committee chairs with a draft. Essentially, I don't want people committee chairs to feel burdened with documenting every single thing that happened at a committee, because that's essentially not, that's a transcript. And I think Cynthia's point may be a little bit different. So for example, if there's a committee meeting that is sharing information on a specific source, you can include that information. But we just want to be mindful that it is summaries and not a transcript of the entire conversation. So I'm just going to use transportation because that's one that's on my head. Transportation committee hosts Bike NYC, and they're talking about expanding into other areas. You're summarizing the presentation and or including, if they provided slides, you can include that in the minutes, but not specifically transcribing or documenting everything that happened or everything that was said in the presentation. It's essentially just a summary. And I hope that answers your question, Cynthia.
And would that include attaching a presentation if we have, right, from the organization, because it's in their prepared presentation, what should be included versus us trying to
Correct.
present their works in their presentation.
So if they provide a presentation, that can be supplemented into the minutes, and to Christina Lem's point, it's essentially what folks have been doing. They've been adding agenda presentations from various folks that present for community meetings and attaching them to minutes.
We finished with Q&A. Do you want chat or hands up?
Let's give hands up a try. I'm a little terrified, but we're
Mute, you might want to mute.
So Christina Lem, you could unmute yourself.
Make sure video's not on.
Hi, everyone. So, no, that was my point. can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Christina, can you try again?
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? No. Can you hear me as a group?
So we can't hear you as a group. We could read your closed caption when you speak. So if you speak slowly, I'll read it.
Never mind.
Fortunately, she said, never mind it.
well, yeah. Try unmuting. Oh, the Zoom is on. That's why. YouTube video.
I'm sorry, where? What are we looking at?
Whatever browser you have open. Yeah, I'm not sure. Okay. So mute that. Still some technical issues, obviously, which is why we're not ready to have hybrid meetings quite yet.
So folks who have raised your hands, please put your question or comment in the chat or the Q&A. We're going to go to the chat next.
Dan, I saw your hand up.
Yeah, I suggest some committee meetings in this fashion as many individual parts so that we can actually improve and practice it. And then at some point it's kind of come to a place where it's going to be hybrid meetings going forward for boards and for other ones. Most of the so I guess we just put I hope not.
So Dan's statement was encouraging folks to try this hybrid and work through the issues so that we can get better at it, because eventually we, there will be a point where it'll either be a hard stop or we'll have to switch to some type mode. I will leave that up to committee chairs to decide how they want to set up meetings, whether they want to do in person only, hybrid, or virtual. But I tend to agree. I think the only way you get better at something is if you practice.
What if you kind of practice meetings, like to work out things, like rather than taking the chance that people might or might not be able to be heard, but like maybe we do a practice run, there's a group of us that's willing to convene and like work
I
out
like that idea.
and try to figure out how we can make it, see if we have plenty of really smart people here and like we can figure this out. Okay.
I agree.
That's too much.
Are you guys on the computers, or could we try to
Ooh, you're disgusting. Were they talking or did you mute them? Or did they stop talking?
Can you hear me? Okay, I can't hear anything, but I guess you can hear me.
You could probably hear us now.
I can hear you now. Yes, yes.
Okay,
So it's,
keep that unmuted.
it's interactive.
Please
Yay!
continue.
So I feel like I'm joining the discussion so late, but I just wanted to go back to the whole minutes thing because it was so important to me because I did, as Julio knows, I've done board development. So this is like this is very passionate for me. And usually it is just really the main bullet points on the first 1 page or 2 pages maximum. And then the rest you really can put in an appendix. I mean, I've done minutes where it's like 10 appendices because really the people only going to look on the first page. And if they're interested from the first page, then they'll go to the appendix. Most of the time they won't. Even if they're chairing that department, they won't. So it's, it's really important to keep it swift, so that people can really get a gist right away. And then we can all figure out like the different committees, what's happening right away. Because I think it's so hard to wade through the 5 pages or 10 pages. I'm done.
Thank you, Christina.
I have Joan Body next. Joan, you could unmute yourself.
Jeremy, can we try it without muting and see if there's any?
Yeah, that's what I did last time. Joan, you could unmute yourself. Joan Body. Joan, we will get back to you. Jerry Chen, you could unmute yourself.
Hey, good evening. I apologize for not being there. I'm actually trying to come to the office now. Going back to the minute stuff, right? What is the point? What is the point if we take a minute? We are recording all the virtual sessions. That's my question.
So that is an excellent question. The minutes are the record for what happened at the committee meeting. I look at the recordings of committee meetings as kind of like a backup, because sometimes recording can't always, with our technology these days, we're not always sure what gets saved or not. So the minutes are the primary source for what transpired, and then if folks want deeper knowledge or more information, then they can review the recording from the meeting. Does that make sense, Jerry?
May I add to that?
It makes sense, right? It just, to me, right, recording is also book a record too. So, but anyway, I mean, it's fine. Either way, it's fine. Thank you.
Well, that's not quite true. We are legally required to produce minutes of our meetings.
Right.
Let's try Joan Body again. Joan, you can unmute yourself. I'm going to ask you to unmute. Okay, could I get back to Chet?
Sure.
So Jerry said you mentioned transportation, top of your list. What about public safety?
So obviously, I think public safety is important. In terms of like the high priorities of things that we're going to be working on, it's not something that I have thought deeper about, but it is definitely something I can talk with both you, Jerry, and Cynthia Felix to see like where are some areas that we need to focus.
I think Joan has unmuted herself now. Joan Body?
Yeah, well, this is, your birthday,
That's Beverly.
and I know it's her birthday too, but I think that she put her.
Okay, I'm going to mute them. Christina Lem said, I didn't realize we're not participating in real time. Jerry Chan can hear her. Cynthia Gonzalez can understand or hear what the members are saying. Christina Lem, can you hear me? Jerry Chan, I can hear you. Cynthia Gonzalez, I could hear Christina very well, but there is no way to unmute or mute. I have to give you permission to unmute or mute. I can't hear anything. That was Christina Lem. Christina Gonzalez, I don't have an unmute button. And that's the end. There's one more Q&A. Joan Body, we cannot understand the host. We cannot unmute ourselves. No icon to do so. We cannot understand and hear people. Joan, you were able to unmute before. Perhaps you could do it again. We were able to hear Beverly. I'm going to ask you to unmute. Nope.
Okay.
The end of Q&A, end of chat.
And then going back to Dan's point, I think there's absolutely value in kind of going through the motions of trying it. We got a small win today. We can hear people joining virtually, which I think is a really great step, but definitely need to practice more so that we can officially have a hybrid meeting where folks joining virtually can participate fully. And again, trial and error. Cindy, I saw your hand up.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I do think there might be some value in if people are willing to come and doing a practice session so we can get this down. If that's something, I know we don't have maybe that could be out of the executive committee or something like that. The other thing I wanted to mention was, we haven't, obviously the last couple of years, we haven't been able to do as much of this, but taking some of our meetings or going out and doing outreach. No?
We can't. So all of our equipment is in this room and it's attached to walls.
Tear it all out.
So for the moment, we need to have meetings here. I've asked for a budget estimate from Metro Sound to give us a mobile unit.
Okay. But I mean, in terms of getting out into the community to talk to people where they are, how can we do that then as a community? Because I think that's really important right now. Not everybody might be able to join us. Like that's something I'm hoping we could think about. I know the technology piece of this makes things complicated, but something to aspire to. And, the next year, if we can figure it out.
No, I agree. And I think, I will leave that answer to, committee chairs and vice chairs, right? Like, if there's issues that, folks want to mobilize around to support the work or engage community residents to like hear more about, I will support in any way I can or that we can. I think there's a whole value, in like engaging with people and engaging with the community. It's really about like what are folks comfortable doing, what do folks need support in doing. But I absolutely agree. I think that like we need to be able to meet people where they are. And then to your first point, and and I think that's part of the challenge of the past couple of years is that we used to be able to meet in other parts of the district, whereas virtual, while anyone can participate if they have access to technology, what we have learned in the last 2 years is that not everyone has access to technology. It is a lot easier. It is more accessible, but there's still a gap, particularly for folks in this district. And that's one thing that we are going to try to be mindful is really figure out how can we still engage people and make it accessible, but also reaching out to, other parts of the district. For example, one of my goals was really like we should be having 2 meetings a year in Windsor Terrace. But we haven't had any in-person meetings, right? But like really figuring out like there's different parts of this district. We're not all with here, and let's figure out a way to engage people and really bring people in.
So Jerry, this is an important point. Jerry Chan says he has a mobile unit. I'm assuming that's volunteering.
I'm gonna hit you up, Jerry. That's serious. I'm gonna hit you up.
Okay, no problem.
There we go.
It's actually called my phone and my iPad.
Okay, we'll talk. We'll talk, Jerry. Yeah. Were there any other questions, comments? Yes.
Earlier when we said community engagement, I thought it was referring to like having people in the neighborhood that know what the community board is, because I know that there's a lot of people that are aware of the community board, but they don't think they're learn about what the community board is, and they don't before we have students that are learning about the community board, so I'm pretty sure that there's a lot of people in the neighborhood, even though they know what community board is, how to get more involved, how to set community meetings, and I think that's something that should be done as well.
I agree wholeheartedly. And that's something that we can absolutely do and work on improving because, yeah, not everyone knows about Community Board 7 and what we do and how we support. And not everyone knows that like public members can participate in committees and can raise issues. And like there's so many different ways for people to participate and just don't necessarily know. And that's something that we absolutely need to work on.
So in the chat, Cynthia Gonzalez asked, please repeat the questions. Can't hear the members.
So sorry, Cynthia, the question was community engagement and engaging and educating the actual community on the role of CB7 and how we can better engage folks and bring them in and educate them on what CB7 is. Karen.
I just wanted to mention that the Community Board 7 Handbook Task Force has already talked about developing it first beginning with a flyer to hand out to people who attend meetings so they know how to work the screen, basic understanding of the flow of the meeting and how to participate. And when that is done, also on the list is to just have some sort of flyer or something to explain to newcomers exactly what you're saying. So maybe I'll tap into you for that.
Awesome. Go ahead, Gabino.
Hello, my name is Gabino Morales. I'm pretty new to this community board. I'm not a community board member, but I'm a
committee member for several committees. Just to what she was saying, and my fellow colleagues here, is that we need to do that outreach, and we really need that outreach because there are people who do want to bring up issues that they need to get resolved, and we need to come out to the community and actually see what's going on with our own eyes. And I know there's been several talks with several different community chairs about creating a task force. I believe there's several community chairs and members from each maybe committee. We could create a committee separate from, maybe sanitation, public safety, and several other committees, but in one work. So to go out into the community, speak to them, and then bring back what we know into our public discussion. So we can just involve everybody. So just to repeat the question, Gabino was one introducing himself, but also saying that there are ways that we can collaborate more with committees and create some kind of task force and ensure that we're reaching out to community members and getting information, and sharing that back with the board. I don't want to replicate kind of the work that we're doing, but I absolutely agree. I think there's ways that committees can collaborate, and we've done that a lot in the past. But I think there's ways we can do that more. I also know the Fifth Avenue bid is perhaps working on something to support the communities and to support the district, and I there's going to be ways that we're going to be tapping into that work. So I don't want to replicate what other folks are doing, but definitely support and enhance work where we can, so that we're really engaging with people in a way that meets them where they are and letting them know what we're doing, and vice versa. Like, we need to hear from community members on things that are important to them. Otherwise, we're not necessarily educating ourselves. Victor?
Actually, to piggyback on that, there's a lot of groups and organizations. Maybe when they're having their functions, or maybe we might be able to get on their list to talk about the board to them. I mean, we'll take our show on the road to them, to talk to them about the community board, what we do, how to join, and all that other stuff. Because until we get that mobile device, to move someplace else, we're not going to be able to have it on live feed for other people. So, but if we take our show on the road to all over the station, I think that should be a good idea.
And just to repeat what Victor said, is connecting more with other organizations and community groups, and making sure that we're sharing what we're doing. And I think you said it also succinctly, is taking our show on the road and really going where people are. And I agree wholeheartedly. I think that that's the work that we should be doing to make sure that we're engaging with people. Katie?
You want to talk about SpaceR's role as a community liaison?
Yes, so we do have a new position, and Katie's question was the community engagement officer. That really is the work of and supporting this work and connecting with local organizations, and sharing what we're doing, but also the role being a resource for board members on, like, who are some stakeholders that we can tap into for certain issues, who can we collaborate with, in making sure that we're utilizing all of, like, the leaderful folks we have in our community, because we don't do work in silos. We're always doing work in partnership, and it's really important that we're connecting with those partners to support that work. And that's one of the reasons why we created that position, is really prioritizing that work, and making sure that board members can connect to organizations, and vice versa. Organizations can connect with the board, and how we can best support the work that they're doing. Thank you, Katie. Cynthia?
Within the next, I'm wondering if we can regularly schedule at monthly board meetings, the conflict of interest trainings, as well as like Robert's Rule of Order, even if they're abbreviated for the first 30 minutes or something, and make sure that happens every year so that new people that come on board and everybody just feels like they understand sort of how, like, clearly understand procedure and navigating any questions that they might have. And if we could just regularly, it would be nice if we could get that every year. We do it this month or whatever. We have it on the calendar. We just know when that's coming.
So thank you, Cindy. And yes, that is something we are currently working on for coming board meeting. We haven't quite figured out like how to fit it in, but it will be very similar to the one we had, I think, a couple of years ago. Sadly, it was pre-COVID, where we had a conflict of interest training prior to the board meeting. Dana?
I do want to note, as one of the new folks, at the new community board members orientation for the entire borough, all of that happened. There was a Robert's Rules training and a conflict of interest training. So that, and there was video taken of that too. So that's something we could use also, instead of reinventing the wheel and just contacting Borough Hall and asking them for that video.
No, that's an excellent point as well. Go ahead, Cindy. You're gonna get the last. Yes.
So, because I went to that training as well, and there was a discussion about how boards should be voting on liquor licenses. And so I wanted to ask about that, if we should be voting on the liquor licenses, because that did come up, or maybe it's something that we can look into and clarify.
That's something we can look into. I believe our I don't want to say policy, but the way we operate now is that we vote on, we do not vote on non-controversial liquor licenses in the district. But we can definitely have a conversation about that practice and how we can move forward.
Okay.
And right now that lives in the public safety.
Public safety.
That lives in the public safety committee, and we can, if we decide to change that, I don't think that would be appropriate for the public safety committee. That's my preference, but I'm open to others. I'll go with Karen and Diana.
I just wanted to point out that we're gonna have the great honor of approving dispensaries as well when they get on board.
Yes.
In a similar manner.
I was gonna say that, and that, yeah, we should consider the liquor license question in the context of that as well and lump it all together. Yeah.
Permits.
Yeah.
No, I agree. And that is something that will, I believe it's starting next year, 2023.
They open in 2023. I don't know when the.
So what I was told that it was going to start in December, but they're not even fully staffed up, so I can't imagine they're going to be prepared by December.
But that is something we will need to consider. Thank you. If there are no other questions or comments, seeing or hearing none, we can adjourn the meeting. Thank you everyone for coming.
Thank you.
Nice.
Thank you. And just to add, I should have added this before. My goal is to have more executive committee meetings. So either quarterly or something, but just bringing people together so that we can share information. Just wanted to say that. Thank you, everyone.